Ancient Wisdom for Modern Living. Chapter 1. The Timeless Teachings of Stillness. In a world obsessed with speed, where notifications tug at our attention and the hours melt into an endless to-do list, the ancient concept of stillness feels almost like rebellion. And yet, stillness drew. Deep, intentional stillnesses. Not laziness, nor is it the absence of activity. It is the presence of awareness. Thousands of years ago, ancient sages from various cultures across the globe understood what we are only now rediscovering in the chaos of our modern lives, that wisdom arises not in the clamor of noise, but in the sacred pause between moments. In ancient China, Lao Tzu wrote of the Tao, the way, a natural path of harmony and balance that could only be followed by releasing the ego and surrendering to silence. The Tao does nothing, he wrote, yet leaves nothing undone. In this paradox is a powerful truth that the essence of life is not found in constant motion, but in aligned, conscious presence. The more we resist silence, the more noise we create within ourselves, mistaking action for effectiveness. But effectiveness, true influence, begins from a centered mind. The Stoics of ancient Rome taught a similar practice of inner discipline and stillness. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and philosopher, often wrote in his journal about the importance of mastering one's own mind amidst the chaos of the empire. He urged himself and Usto return to the present moment to quiet the storm within, because we cannot control external events, only our responses. This teaching is as applicable in our age of anxiety as it was in his age of warfare. The noise of the world can only control us if we have not found a quiet anchor inside. This quietude is not something we stumble into accidentally. It is cultivated through practice, through choice, through the willingness to sit in discomfort and find what lies beneath the surface. Stillness is an act of courage in a world that never stops moving. Consider the practice of meditation, whether in the yogic traditions of India, the contemplative prayer of early Christian monks, or the mindfulness of Zen Buddhism. It all points to the same core principle: the value of being overdoing. These practices remind us that our greatest power doesn't come from how much we can push, produce, or perform, but from how deeply we can connect to ourselves, to others, to the present. This reconnection does not require exotic retreats or perfect environments. It begins in ordinary moments, in sipping tea without distraction, in walking without rushing, in choosing to listen more than speak. The modern mind has been trained to avoid stillness because stillness can be uncomfortable. In stillness, we hear the thoughts we've buried, the fears we've ignored, and the truths we've postponed. But only when we face these inner voices can we live a life that is conscious, free, and deeply rooted. Technology has created a paradox. It connects us while constantly distracting us. We scroll endlessly to avoid confronting the discomfort of boredom or solitude, but in doing so, we sacrifice our depth. The ancient world did not suffer from this affliction. Without constant access to stimulation, people turned inward, to stories, to nature, to the cycles of the moon, and the lessons of silence. In doing so, they cultivated a resilience that we often lack today. Stillness is not only a spiritual practice, it is an emotional and physical necessity. Stress, anxiety, burnout are symptoms of disconnection from ourselves. Relearning stillness is not optional if we want to reclaim our peace. To bring stillness into modern life does not require us to abandon it all and live in a monastery. It requires only intention. Wake up a little earlier. Sit for 5 minutes in silence. Observe your breath. Watch your thoughts pass by like clouds in the sky, neither clinging to them nor judging them. Give your mind space to unwind. Create pockets of stillness in your day before meals, in between meetings, during your commute. Listen not just to the noise of the world, but to the rhythm of your soul. The ancient traditions were not about escape. They were about return. A return to the self, a return to the present, a return to wisdom. Because in stillness, you begin to remember who you are. Chapter 2. The Wisdom of Simplicity. Simplicity is often misunderstood in modern society as a lack, as something lesser, as the opposite of ambition or achievement. We equate more with better, complexity with intelligence, and accumulation with success. Yet, for thousands of years, the great wisdom traditions have taught the exact opposite. Simplicity is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the quiet, deliberate act of choosing what truly matters over what simply demands attention. In ancient cultures, whether in the minimalism of the Zen temples of Japan, the gentle guidance of Confucian order, or the rugged wisdom of indigenous tribes, there was an understanding that a simpler life was not only more peaceful but more powerful. When we let go of the unnecessary, we make space for the essential. We create clarity where there was once confusion, calm where there was once chaos, and most importantly, we return to a way of living that nourishes the soul rather than drains it. In our modern world, where multitasking is glorified and material accumulation is celebrated, simplicity is a radical act. It requires the courage to stop chasing and start listening. It asks us to say no to things, to distractions, to ego, so we can say yes to meaning, presence, and peace. Ancient philosophies did not teach simplicity as deprivation but as refinement. The Stoics believed in focusing only on what was within our control and letting go of what was not. The Buddha taught that desire was the root of suffering, and by simplifying our wants, we free ourselves from pain. Indigenous wisdom often emphasized living in harmony with the land, taking only what was needed and honoring every part of the natural world. These traditions all point to one truth. Simplicity is not about having less, but about needing less, about valuing the right things, and about living in alignment with our deeper values rather than society's surface-level noise. When we declutter our lives physically, mentally, emotionally, we begin to see more clearly. Simplicity is clarity. It's the decision to own fewer things so we can be owned by fewer distractions. It's the courage to keep our schedule spacious so we can breathe and think and feel. It's the practice of being fully present with one person, one task, one moment, instead of scattering ourselves thin across 10. In ancient times, rituals and rhythms were built around nature and community, not around digital alerts or crowded calendars. Meals were shared without screens. Conversations were deep and unrushed. Work was steady but not frantic. And in that space, life was savored rather than survived. Embracing simplicity today doesn't mean abandoning modern life. It means returning to what is essential within it. It means evaluating where our time, energy, and attention are going, and asking whether those choices align with our values. Do we really need more gadgets, more meetings, more noise? Or do we need more stillness, more purpose, more connection? It allows us to rediscover joy in the little things: a quiet morning, a shared laugh, a walk in nature. It reminds us that beauty is not in extravagance, but in authenticity. The most powerful lives are not necessarily the most visible ones, but the most intentional. As you look around your life, what feels heavy? What feels noisy? What could be released so something lighter, truer, more soul-nourishing could enter? Simplicity is not an aesthetic trend. It is a spiritual discipline. It is the doorway back to meaning in a world addicted to more. And when we strip away the clutter external and internal, we find that what remains is what was most important all along. Relationships, purpose, presence, peace. These are the treasures simplicity protects. And this is the wisdom ancient minds knew intuitively, that when life is simpler, the heart can be fuller. That when the noise fades, the soul can speak. That when we live with less, we often discover more. Chapter 3. Harmony with Nature, the Forgotten Relationship. In the ancient world, nature was not something separate from humanity. It was our teacher, our provider, our mirror, and our sacred home. From the rhythmic planting cycles of ancient farmers to the spiritual reverence of rivers, mountains, and trees in tribal cultures, human beings once lived in intimate communion with the natural world. The seasons were not merely weather patterns, they were teachers of patience, transformation, and renewal. The sun and moon were not just celestial objects, but timekeepers for sacred rituals and inner reflection. Our ancestors walked barefoot on the earth, breathed unpolluted air, and looked up at star-filled skies, not as scientists, but as children in awe of the vast mystery. This deep connection to the earth wasn't naive, it was wise. It was practical and spiritual at once, rooted in respect and the recognition that everything is connected. Today, in our hyper-industrial, urbanized societies, this sacred bond has been eroded not by necessity, but by forgetfulness. We have paved over the soil that once fed us, lit the skies that once guided us, and replaced the stillness of forests with the hum of traffic and screens. While technology has granted us many conveniences, it has also widened the distance between us and the natural world. We see nature now as a resource to extract from or a backdrop for recreation, not a living system we are inherently part of. This disconnection has come at a cost ecologically, mentally, emotionally. Our modern illnesses, burnout, anxiety, insomnia, depression are not just medical phenomena, they are symptoms of a life lived out of sync with the rhythms of the earth. Ancient wisdom reminds us that we are not above nature, we are within it, and the further we drift from it, the more we lose not just our health, but our sense of meaning and belonging. In indigenous traditions around the world, from the Native American tribes to the Aboriginal Australians, there is a profound understanding that every element of nature holds a lesson. The eagle teaches vision and clarity. The bear, strength and introspection. The river, the art of surrender. These cultures do not study nature like scientists dissecting an object. They listen to it as students humbly learning from a master. There is a reverence in these relationships that is entirely absent from the modern mindset of control and consumption. Even in ancient Eastern philosophies like Taoism and Ayurveda, harmony with nature is not optional, it is foundational. In Taoism, living in accordance with the Tao means observing the effortless way nature balances itself. In Ayurveda, health is seen as a balance between our inner elements and the outer elements of the seasons, climate, and diet. When that balance is lost, disease follows not as punishment, but as a signal to realign. Rebuilding this lost relationship does not require moving to a mountain or abandoning modern life. It begins with small, sacred steps. It begins with awareness. When was the last time you watched the sunrise in silence, or let your bare feet sink into grass or sand? When was the last time you noticed the moon's phases, or felt the wind, and saw it not as weather but as a presence? These moments are not just poetic, they are healing. Science now confirms what ancient people always knew intuitively. Spending time in nature reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, improves mood, and boosts cognitive function. But the value goes beyond biology. Nature teaches us how to live. A tree does not rush its growth. It roots deeply before reaching high. The ocean does not cling to waves. It lets each one rise and fall. The seasons do not resist change. They embrace it fully. In nature, we remember patience, resilience, and flow. We learn that there is a time for blooming and a time for resting, a time to act and a time to be still. The frantic pace of modern life pushes us to be in constant summer, always producing, always shining, always striving. But life is richer when lived in all its seasons. When we re-enter nature's rhythm, we reconnect with our own. We begin to trust life more. We begin to see that change is not failure but evolution. That storms are not the end but the prelude to new growth. There is also humility in this reconnection. the more we observe nature, the more we see how small we are and how precious. We see that the earth does not need us, but we desperately need her. We learn gratitude for clean air, fresh water, sunlight, and soil, all things we too often take for granted. And from that, gratitude arises responsibility. Ancient wisdom always paired reverence with responsibility. In native teachings, decisions were made not just for the next year or the next election cycle, but for the next 7 generations. This long view was not idealistic, it was essential. Today, in our rush for profit and convenience, we act as though the future is someone else's problem. But the earth is not an inheritance we received from the past. It is a loan we must repay to the future. To live with ancient wisdom in the modern world means making different choices not out of guilt, but out of love. It means growing a garden, even a small one on a balcony, to remember where food comes from. It means turning off the noise and stepping into a park, a forest, a beach, to recalibrate your nervous system and your soul. It means reducing waste, honoring resources, consuming mindfully. But beyond actions, it means a shift in mindset from dominion to partnership, from ownership to stewardship. We are not the masters of nature. We are one of her many children. And perhaps most importantly, harmony with nature is a doorway to harmony with ourselves. When we watch a bird soar or a tree stand firm in a storm, something ancient awakens in us. A memory, a longing, a truth we have always known, that we belong here not as conquerors, but as co-creators. That we are not lost souls wandering aimlessly through technology and trend sway, are rooted beings, called to live in rhythm, called to live with care. The path back to this harmony is not complicated. It is simply quiet, deliberate, and full of listening. And when we walk that path step by simple step, we begin to feel the heartbeat of the earth again. And in that heartbeat, we find peace. Chapter 4. The Power of Ritual. Sacred Moments in Everyday Life. In the ancient world, life was not lived in a continuous blur. It was paced by rituals, framed by sacred routines that offered meaning, structure, and soul. From the rising of the sun to the lighting of evening lamps, people moved through their days with intentionality, grounding even the simplest tasks in reverence. These rituals, whether lighting incense before meditation, breaking bread as a family, greeting the dawn with prayer, or chanting beneath the stars, were not reserved for religious ceremony alone. They were embedded into the fabric of daily existence. They were anchors in time, moments that reminded people of who they were and what they belonged to. In today's fast-moving, hyper-distracted world, we have largely lost this rhythm. We wake up to alarms, rush through routines, eat while scrolling, and fall asleep with overstimulated minds. Our days blur together, not because time moves faster, but because we move through time without pause. Without ritual, life becomes a sequence of tasks. With ritual, life becomes a sacred unfolding. Rituals offer more than just structure, they offer presence. They are the invitation to slow down, to become aware, to give your full attention to a single moment and treat it as sacred. This is something ancient people understood intuitively. A cup of tea was not just a drink, it was a meditation. Bathing was not just hygiene, it was purification. Planting a seed was not just agriculture, it was an act of faith. Every culture had its rituals, not as superstition but as connection to the divine, to nature, to community, and to self. These acts reminded people that life is not to be rushed through, but to be met with reverence. They knew that how we do anything is how we do everything. That the way we tie our sandals, prepare our food, speak to others, or greet the morning is a reflection of the energy we bring into the world. In the absence of ritual, modern life has filled the space with automation and distraction, but our souls are still hungry for the sacred. We feel this hunger in our restlessness, in our longing for meaning, in our craving for something deeper than notifications and checklists. This is why we must reclaim ritual not as dogma, but as devotion. not to impress anyone, but to remind ourselves that life is holy. You don't need candles or chants to begin. You need only intention. Lighting a candle before journaling, walking mindfully to greet the morning sun, creating a tech-free hour before bed, blessing your meals, writing down a single gratitude each night. These are simple rituals, but they carry immense power. When repeated, they become more than habits. They become spiritual scaffolding. They become the language through which your life speaks to your soul. The power of ritual lies in repetition. In a world that constantly demands novelty, rituals root us in something familiar and timeless. They create continuity in a fragmented existence. They build a sense of inner safety, which allows us to open our hearts more freely. Children thrive when their days follow a rhythm, not because they're controlling, but because rituals make the world feel predictable, safe, and loving. Adults are no different. We need rhythm not to trap us, but to free us from anxiety, from decision fatigue, from the endless scramble of life without landmarks. When you know that you begin your day with silence and end it with reflection, everything in between feels more grounded. There is also a beauty in crafting rituals that are uniquely your own. Not every sacred act must be ancient. Rituals evolve with you. A walk in nature every Sunday can become your Sabbath. A deep breath before speaking can become your vow to bring peace into conversations. A morning stretch can be your invocation of strength. What matters is not the ritual itself, but the energy you bring to it. Ancient wisdom teaches us that the outer act is a container for inner transformation. Bowing your head in prayer is not about the motion, it's about humility. Lighting incense is not about the scent, it's about intention. Washing your hands is not just about cleanliness, it's a symbolic letting go. Every ritual is a doorway to deeper awareness. When we commit to even the simplest rituals, we also begin to remember our place in the larger cycles of life. We align not just with time, but with nature. The moon waxes and wanes, the seasons shift. Our bodies change. Rituals help us navigate transitions with grace, with gratitude, with grounding. The birth of a child, the end of a job, the turning of the year, all these deserve markers. And when we create rituals around them, we are saying, this moment matters. I am present for it. I honor it. We become more attuned not only to the special moments but to the ordinary ones, which, in truth, are just as sacred. In the quiet of a daily ritual, something begins to shift. We start to listen more, to feel more, to appreciate the textures of life, the warmth of water, the rhythm of breath, the sound of silence. We begin to understand what the ancient mystics meant when they said the divine is in everything. Rituals are how we remember that truth, day after day. And when life gets chaotic, as it inevitably does, rituals become our refuge. They bring us back to center. They remind us that even in uncertainty, we can create pockets of peace. The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more presence. Rituals are how we become present to the miracle of our lives. They are how we slow down enough to feel the pulse of the moment. And in that stillness, we hear the whisper of the soul. The ancient ones knew that without ritual, we forget who we are. With ritual, we return home to ourselves again and again. Chapter 5. Mindful Speech, the Art of Conscious Communication. In ancient traditions across the world, words were never seen as just sound or symbols. They were sacred instruments of creation. The Vedic sages of India spoke of Vakti, divine power of speech, as one of the primal forces of the universe. In the biblical tradition, the universe itself begins with, "Let there be light," a spoken intention echoing into the void. The Taoists taught silence as the root of wisdom, and the indigenous tribes of the Americas emphasized storytelling as a sacred duty to preserve knowledge and heal hearts. For the ancients, words were not cheap. They were energy. They carried weight. They had the power to heal or to harm, to build up or to break down. In today's world, flooded by noise, speed, and careless language, this truth has been largely forgotten. We speak to fill the silence. We speak to assert, to defend, to impress. But often, we don't speak with awareness. We don't pause to consider the impact of our words. And in that disconnection, much of the magic of communication is lost. To live with ancient wisdom in the modern world means reclaiming the sacredness of speech. It means learning to speak with purpose, with clarity, with kindness. It means slowing down enough to truly listen not just to the words of others, but to the silence beneath them. In most ancient cultures, listening was considered an act of reverence. Elders didn't interrupt. Children learned by watching, by listening, by absorbing through presence. Silence was not uncomfortable, it was a space for the truth to emerge. And when words were spoken, they were chosen carefully. Not just for what they meant, but for what they carried. This is mindful speech, and it is an art form we desperately need to revive. Mindful speech begins with intention. Why are you speaking? To connect? To share? To correct? To uplift? So often, our communication is reactive. We respond out of habit, out of ego, out of fear. But when we pause and bring intention to our words, everything changes. A moment of awareness before speaking can save a conversation, preserve a relationship, or inspire healing. The Buddha taught that right speech of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path consists of words that are true, kind, helpful, and timely. Not every truth needs to be said. Not every opinion needs to be voiced. There is wisdom in restraint, and there is power in words chosen with care. Modern life thrives on fast communication texts, tweets, endless talking, but deeper connection requires something slower, more deliberate. Ancient wisdom teaches us to speak less but with more soul. To express from the heart, not just the mind. When we begin to practice this, we find that people listen more closely because they can feel the energy behind our words. They sense our sincerity. They trust our presence. This doesn't mean sugarcoating the truth. It means learning to deliver it with compassion. There is a way to speak hard truths without harm. There is a way to stand firm without aggression. There is a way to disagree without dehumanizing. One of the most powerful practices you can adopt is to make your speech an offering. Imagine every word you speak as something you place into another's heart. Would you still say it the same way? Would you say it at all? This practice transforms casual conversations into sacred exchanges. It invites us to elevate not just what we say, but how we say it. Tone matters. Intention matters. Presence matters. In many spiritual traditions, chanting, prayer, and storytelling are forms of speech that alter consciousness not because of volume or persuasion, but because they are infused with spirit. You don't need to be religious to bring that same presence into your everyday speech. You just need to care, to be awake, to remember that words, once spoken, cannot be taken back, but they can always be infused with love. There is also a discipline in silence, in not speaking just to fill a void, in allowing space in conversations for depth, reflection, and real emotion. Silence, when held consciously, is not awkward. It is fertile. It allows the soul to catch up with the body. It gives others room to feel safe and heard. In relationships, silence can be a sanctuary. In conflict, it can be a bridge. And in our own minds, it can be the clearing where clarity blooms. The sages knew this. They spent time in solitude, not because they hated people, but because they understood that truth emerges from stillness. The words you speak to others are important, but so are the words you speak to yourself. Self-talk is one of the most influential conversations you will ever have. The inner critic, the harsh voice, the constant judgment, these are not just personal quirks. They shape your identity, your energy, your life. Ancient practices like affirmations, mantras, and sacred sound, such as Om or Amen, were not invented as spiritual decoration. They were tools for inner alignment. Speaking kind, empowering words to yourself is not vanity, it is spiritual hygiene. It is how you reprogram a wounded mind and return it to truth. If you want to live with more peace, power, and authenticity, begin by observing your speech. Watch what you say when you're tired, when you're triggered, when you're afraid. Notice the patterns. Don't judge, just notice. Awareness is the first step. Then begin to choose differently, one word at a time. Speak slowly, speak truthfully, speak as if it matters because it does. When you do this, your entire life begins to shift. Your relationships deepen, your presence expands, your energy becomes more magnetic. People feel safer with you because they know you are not just speaking, you are connecting. Words are bridges, or they are walls. In every conversation, you are building one or the other. Ancient wisdom calls us to build bridgesto, use our voices not to divide but to heal. To express not just from the surface but from the soul. This is the art of conscious communication. And in practicing it, you become not just a better speaker, but a more awakened human being. Chapter 6. Living in harmony with nature. Returning to the rhythms that sustain us. There was a time when the human heart beat in sync with the earth's rhythm. People rose with the sun, worked with their hands, moved with the seasons, and bowed in reverence to the moon. Nature wasn't an escape from life, it was life itself. The wind wasn't background noise, it was a voice. The rain was not an inconvenience, it was a blessing. Every element, air, fire, water, earth, was honored as sacred, not just for survival but for connection. The ancient ones knew that to live in harmony with nature was to live in harmony with the self. They understood that the trees breathe with us, that the rivers reflect us, and that the soil holds memory and medicine. Today, however, that relationship has been frayed. We no longer live with the earth, we live on it, around it, apart from it. We extract, consume, discard, we build over forests, fill the skies with haze, and drown the oceans in waste. And yet, for all our modern advancement, we feel empty. We ache for something we can't quite name. That ache is homesickness. We are not lost. We are just disconnected from the source that once grounded us. To reclaim the wisdom of the ancients is to return to the earth not as tourists, but as children coming home. This doesn't require abandoning your life or living off the grid. It begins with awareness, with reverence, with choosing to see the natural world not as scenery but as sacred. Nature is not something out there, it is in us. We are made of the same elements. We are not superior to the earth. We are of the earth. The more we remember this, the more peace we find. Our anxiety eases when we walk barefoot on the grass. Our minds clear when we watch clouds pass or hear birds sing. These are not coincidences. Nature is the oldest healer, the wisest teacher, the most generous companion. Ancient wisdom traditions across continents treated nature as a living library. The herbs had voices, the mountains held wisdom. The animals were respected not only for what they provided, but for the roles they played in the circle of life. There were ceremonies for planting, for harvest, for rain. People asked permission before taking. They gave thanks. They listened. This wasn't romanticism. It was relationship. And relationships thrive on attention. When we give our attention to the natural world, we receive something deeper than data. We receive alignment. Our breath slows. Our body relaxes. Our senses sharpen. We remember that we are not separate from the rhythm of life. We are part of it. Modern living often pushes us to chase control, efficiency, and convenience. But nature teaches surrender. It cannot be rushed. The seasons change in their own time. The tide ebbs and flows regardless of human desire. This surrender is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is what the ancients practiced daily. They did not try to dominate the earth. They danced with it. They observed the cycles and adapted. Winter was for rest. Spring for planting, summer for growth, autumn for harvest. This wasn't just agriculture, it was a metaphor for life. You too are meant to move through seasons. You are not meant to bloom all the time. There are seasons for becoming, seasons for being. When you live in harmony with nature, you stop resisting your rhythms. You learn to rest without guilt, to grow without pressure, to let go when the time comes. Even in small ways, returning to the natural world restores our soul. A daily walk outdoors, a small garden, a moment spent watching the stars, drinking herbal teas with intention. Listening to the rain without distraction. These are rituals of reconnection. They don't require money, just presence, and in these quiet acts, we realign. We remember that nature is not something we visit on weekends, it is a way of being. The earth is always offering us lessons if we listen. The tree shows us how to stand tall and bend with grace. The river shows us how to move forward and let go. The sun shows us how to rise again. The moon reminds us that even in darkness we are whole. There is a beauty in simplicity, a peace in slowing down. Ancient people didn't need screens to be entertained. They were enchanted by the colors of the sky, the stories in firelight, the silence of a snow-covered field. This enchantment wasn't childish, it was sacred wonder. And it's still available to us. The world hasn't lost its magic. We've just stopped paying attention. But attention is the way back. When you pause to notice, to appreciate, to care, you step into alignment with a rhythm that has existed for millennia. And in that rhythm, you heal. Living in harmony with nature also changes how we live with others. It softens us, makes us more generous, more patient, more connected. We stop trying to force life to fit our schedule. We start trusting the flow. We stop exploiting and start coexisting. The problems we face globally, climate change, resource depletion, loss of biodiversity, are not just scientific or political. They are spiritual. They are symptoms of forgetting. When we remember that the earth is not a resource but a relative, we begin to change not only our habits but our hearts. This is not about perfection. It's about relationship. You don't need to be a farmer or an environmentalist to live with nature. You just need to care, to pay attention, to ask what the earth needs from you, not just what you can take from it. You can begin by simply noticing the moon cycle, the scent of the soil after rain, the way leaves change color, the songs of birds at dawn. These are the ancient songs of life, and they are still being sung. To live in harmony with nature is to say yes to life, not the life built by man alone, but the life sustained by sun, wind, soil, and stars. It is to return to your source, to align your rhythm with the sacred pulse that has always been beating beneath your feet. It is not a step back in time, it is a step forward into wisdom. The ancients knew that we cannot be well unless the earth is well. And when we live from that knowing, we don't just save the planet, we save ourselves. Chapter 7. The Sacredness of Time. Living with Intention, Not Urgency. In the ancient world, time was not a countdown. It was a rhythm, a dance, a flow. The rising of the sun was not a signal to rush, but an invitation to awaken with purpose. The setting of the sun was not a deadline to panic, but a gentle reminder to rest and release. Time was never owned. It was not something to be fought, managed, hacked, or controlled. It was honored, watched, trusted. Ancient cultures across the globe treated time as a sacred companion, not a taskmaster. The Babylonians looked to the stars and moon phases to mark moments with reverence. The Mayans built complex calendars not just to track days, but to align with the divine. The Egyptians saw time as cyclical and eternal, where endings were always beginnings. Even in the East, philosophies like Taoism taught us to move with the current, not against it, to harmonize our actions with the natural unfolding of time rather than forcing results. They all knew what modern society has forgotten, that to live well is not to fill time but to feel it, not to rush through life but to rise in rhythm with it. Today, we treat time like a shrinking resource. We pack it, race against it, try to squeeze more from it. We glorify hustle, measure worth in productivity, and fear idleness as wasted life. We fill our schedules, multitask, overextended, yet at the end of the day, many of us still feel unfulfilled. Why? Because urgency has replaced intention. We're busy, yes, but not always present. We're achieving, perhaps, but not always aligned. And ancient wisdom gently reminds us, there is a better way. There is a slower, deeper, more meaningful way to live. That way begins by seeing time not as something you run out of, but something you enter into. Not as a race, but as a sacred rhythm. Every moment, every breath, every hour is a vessel. What you pour into it is what shapes your life. To live with intention is to make peace with time. It is to rise in the morning with a heart full of purpose, not panic. It is to choose where your attention goes, not scatter it across distractions. It is to ask, what matters most today? And let that be the compass for your actions. When we stop treating time as an enemy, we start to move differently. We begin to create space for reflection, for presence, for depth. The ancient philosophers, sages, monks, and mystics all had this in common. They carved out time to be still, to think deeply, to walk slowly, to talk meaningfully. That time was not wasted, it was necessary. It was how wisdom was born. In modern life, we often say, I don't have time. But the truth is, we have time, we just don't always use it consciously. Living intentionally doesn't mean abandoning schedules or rejecting ambition. It means infusing your days with clarity and choice. It means saying yes with your whole heart and no without guilt. It means aligning your outer life with your inner values. The ancients organized their time around what was sacred, around rituals, around the cycles of nature, around the soul's needs. What if we too began to honor time as sacred? What if we treated our mornings as rituals of alignment, our meals as offerings, our evenings as gentle landings? What if we stopped measuring time only by clocks and calendars and started feeling it in our bones, in our breath, in the beat of our lives? There is a reason ancient practices like mindfulness, meditation, and prayer have endured for thousands of years. They slow down the mind. They soften the heart. They help us return to the present moment, the only place life truly exists. The more present you become, the more expansive time feels. A moment of deep presence can be more meaningful than hours of unconscious activity. And presence is not found in doing more, it is found in being more, being aware, being connected, being grounded in the now. One of the most beautiful things ancient wisdom teaches us is that time is not linear, it's sacred. It circles, it spirals, it invites you to return again and again to what matters most. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you are meant to be, if only you can be present enough to feel it. Every sunrise is a new invitation. Every sunset is a sacred pause. Every breath is a chance to begin again. When you live this way, you stop chasing life and start living it. You stop filling time and start fulfilling your purpose. Technology, noise, and speed are not inherently bad, but they must be held in balance. Ancient wisdom doesn't ask you to reject the modern world, it asks you to bring soul into it. To build your days around your values, to use tools with intention, to create space for silence, for wonder, for meaning. You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You just need to begin moment at a time. Maybe you wake up 10 minutes earlier to breathe, reflect, or give thanks. Maybe you put your phone away during meals. Maybe you take a walk without headphones and simply listen to the world. These are not small things. They are sacred acts of returning. Time, when honored, becomes a teacher. It shows you what truly matters. It helps you let go of urgency and embrace grace. It reminds you that the point of life is not to be fast, it is to be full. Full of presence, of joy, of purpose. And when you live from that fullness, you change not just your schedule, but your soul. You become more alive, more grounded, more in rhythm with the deeper pulse of life. This is the gift of ancient wisdom in modern living. It restores time to its rightful place not as a master, but as a companion on your sacred journey. Chapter 8. The Power of Community. Finding belonging in connection. In every ancient culture, community was not just a social structure, it was the lifeblood of existence. It was the vessel through which knowledge, love, tradition, and support flowed. To live fully meant to live in harmony with others' family, tribe, neighbors, and even strangers. The individual was never isolated but woven into the fabric of the collective. This sense of belonging was essential for survival, yes, but it was also a source of profound meaning. It was how identity was formed, how wisdom was shared, and how joy was multiplied. From the tight-knit villages of early humans to the grand gatherings of indigenous peoples around sacred fires, the power of community was clear. Together, we are stronger, wiser, and more whole. Today, despite the miracle of global connectivity, many of us feel deeply disconnected. Technology connects us superficially but often distances us emotionally. Urban life can feel lonely. Social media shows us highlights but hides struggles. The paradox of modern life is that while we have more ways to reach out than ever before, true connection feels more elusive. Ancient wisdom reminds us that connection is not just about proximity or quantity, it is about depth, authenticity, and presence. It's about seeing and being seen. It's about holding space for one another's stories, pain, dreams, and growth. Community is not something we find by accident. It is something we cultivate with intention. It begins with vulnerability, the courage to show up as we are, imperfect and human. In the ancient world, rites of passage, ceremonies, and storytelling brought people together in shared experience. They created bonds forged in trust, respect, and mutual support. These rituals were the threads that held communities together across generations. In our modern lives, rituals might look different, but their essence remains. A weekly dinner with close friends, a meditation group, a volunteer circle, or a book club can all become modern rituals of belonging. The benefits of true community are vast. Scientific studies now confirm what ancient wisdom long taught. Strong social bonds improve mental and physical health, increase longevity, and enhance resilience in times of crisis. When we feel supported, we are more willing to take risks, pursue our dreams, and heal from wounds. When we are part of something bigger than ourselves, life feels more meaningful. Community nurtures our soul just as the earth nurtures the seed. It reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles or our joys. It calls us to contribute to, give, as well as receive. Yet, building authentic community requires effort. It asks us to practice empathy, to listen deeply, to be patient and forgiving. It challenges us to move beyond judgment and fear, to embrace diversity and difference. It calls us to be presento, truly show up, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. Ancient teachings remind us that the health of the community depends on the health of each individual, and vice versa. When one suffers, all suffer. When one thrives, all thrive. This is the principle of interconnectedness, a foundation of many indigenous and spiritual traditions. In practical terms, cultivating community starts with small acts. Reaching out to a neighbor, inviting a colleague for coffee, volunteering locally, or simply smiling at strangers can plant seeds of connection. But it also requires creating spaces for honest dialogue, spaces where people can share their fears, hopes, and truths without fear of rejection. Listening without interrupting, holding silence respectfully, and validating others' experiences are sacred skills. When practiced consistently, they build trust and open the door to deeper relationships. Another vital aspect of community is service. Ancient wisdom teaches that true belonging is inseparable from contribution. To be part of a community means to participate in its well-being. This could be through acts of kindness, sharing skills, protecting the environment, or advocating for justice. Service transforms the self because it shifts focus outward, dissolving the boundaries of ego and isolation. It reminds us that our lives are intertwined with the lives of others and with the world itself. When we serve, we step into a greater flow of meaning and purpose. At times, community can also be a mirror place that reflects back to us our blind spots and growth edges. It challenges us to become more patient, compassionate, and humble. It invites us to practice forgiveness, not only toward others, but toward ourselves. Ancient wisdom understands that no community is perfect. Conflicts arise, misunderstandings happen, and wounds can deepen. Yet, how these moments are handled often determines the strength and resilience of the community. Healing is a collective act, a shared responsibility. It requires openness, courage, and the willingness to lean into discomfort for the sake of greater harmony. Technology, for all its flaws, also offers unique opportunities to build communities beyond physical boundaries. Online groups centered around shared values, spiritual practices, or healing journeys can become powerful sources of support. However, the challenge remains to bring authenticity and presence into these digital spaces, resisting the urge to settle for shallow interactions. The best communities, ancient or modern, are grounded in trust and genuine care, whether they meet around a fire or on a video call. Ultimately, ancient wisdom invites us to remember that we are not isolated individuals, but threads in a vast, beautiful tapestry. Each thread matters. Each connection enriches the whole. When we embrace community as a sacred gift, we unlock reservoirs of strength and joy that no one can find alone. We learn that our stories are intertwined, that our journeys are shared, and that together we rise higher. As you move forward in your life, carry this truth with you. Belonging is not just a desire, it is a necessity. It is nourishment for your spirit and a foundation for your growth. Seek out your tribe, nurture your relationships, and be willing to both give and receive love. Build rituals that deepen connection. Offer your gifts in service. Listen with your heart. When you do, you will find that the ancient power of community is alive and waiting for you, right here, right now. Returning to what we never truly left. The journey through ancient wisdom is not a retreat into the past, it is a return to the essence that has always lived within us. We are not learning something new, we are remembering something eternal. Beneath the layers of modern noise, convenience, and complexity, there still exists a deeper knowing, a softer truth, a timeless rhythm. It pulses in your breath, stirs in your heart, and calls you back through moments of stillness, awe, and longing. This wisdom is not locked in temples or scrolls. It's not reserved for mystics or monks. It lives in the soil, the stars, the silence. It lives in you. We've explored the sacredness of simplicity, the healing power of nature, the art of intentional time, the strength of inner stillness, and the beauty of living in rhythm with something greater than ourselves. We've seen how ancient cultures across the world, from the Stoic philosophers of Greece to the spiritual seekers of the East, from indigenous healers to desert mystics, carried truths that transcend time because they speak not to trends, but to the soul. These truths are as relevant today as they were centuries ago because human longing has not changed. We still seek peace. We still crave meaning. We still desire connection to ourselves, to others, to life itself. Modern living is fast, demanding, often disorienting. But within it, you can choose differently. You can anchor yourself in deeper values. You can move slower, speak softer, listen longer. You can honor your body, your breath, your moments. You can choose rituals over rush, presence over productivity, meaning over noise. The world won't slow down for you, but you can slow down within it. And in doing so, you find clarity. You find alignment. You find yourself again. This is not about perfection. The ancients were not perfect. They too struggled with loss, confusion, fear, and uncertainty. But they left us a mappa way of seeing and being that brings us closer to balance, to harmony, to wholeness. That map lives in your hands now. Every decision to pause, to reflect, to connect, to simplify, to return to nature, to act with purpose, each one is a step back onto the path, a step toward peace. You don't need to live in the mountains or give up your modern life to live wisely. You simply need to live awake, to live with intention, to live in relationship with the earth, with your body, with your time, with the divine. Ancient wisdom teaches us that we are never truly lost. We are just distracted. And the way home is always here, always now, always within. So take a breath, place your hand on your heart, listen not to the outer world, but to the quiet knowing within. That is the voice of timeless truth. That is the call of ancient wisdom. And when you follow it, you don't just change your life. You return to the life you were always meant to live.